Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another FrameGame. Today we will be talking about the Ubisoft presentation for E3, and I gotta say, it was really good. It certainly didn't disappoint. I mean, the beginning started off a little weird. There were some other points that were like, what? But other than that, the games they showed were fantastic. They showed a lot of gameplay and different trailers, along with a little sweet treat. Well, two sweet treats, actually, that surprised me. So, I'm going to start off with the beginning that, like I said, started a little weird. They had a marching band intro, which it was kind of funny. There was a guy in a panda suit that was essentially the leader of the marching band. You know, he had his baton and everything, and he was really going at it. He was putting forth his best effort, which I kind of feel sorry for that guy because it must have been crazy hot in there. But yeah, he did a great job. I mean, he was super enthusiastic, and they were marching around outside. You could tell it was outside of the facility just by looking at the cameras. So immediately when I started seeing it, I was like, oh, they're gonna come in and march through the audience up to the stage. It was kind of obvious, but there was also a girl who seemed a little bit too sensual towards the panda. Like, she was giving it the eyes every time that the panda walked past, and when she first entered, she like grabbed his hand and kind of danced them a little bit and like gave him the eyebrows, you know. It was like, oh, hey. Like, it was really weird. And then there was this other guy who was like a sci-fi looking dude, and he was a bit it was almost as if he was trying to be a bit too cool for his own good. Like, I don't know, he had partially colored hair that was like purple on one side and then brown on the other, and he was really getting into it too. I will say, man, the music was fantastic in that part. Like, the saxophone players were just killing it. And of course they had the drummer ensemble and stuff as well. It was pretty legit when it came to the music anyway. The band was a little weird, but then they came up on stage, and right behind them on the screens came up their Just Dance 2019 background, and they had some like 3D CGI characters dancing along with the band in the background with the logo. I mean, it was really cool, but that was all we got for Just Dance. Like, they didn't show any other songs other than what the band played. Obviously, those songs are probably going to be in the game if they played them. But other than that, that was it. You know, there was no gameplay or anything shown. They were just like, Just Dance 2019, and then they danced and played their music while walking off of stage. I mean, it was a good reveal. It was just, you know, I mean, it's not until 2019, so it seems like they still have a lot of work to do on the game, which is probably why there wasn't any gameplay shown. But I appreciate them showing it off, you know, and they did a pretty good job with the music and the camera work for the band on the outside coming in and walking through the audience. And people seemed riled up with it, you know. It really got people pumping and ready for the presentation. So I'll say one of the less cringeworthy things that they've done with Just Dance, so I'll applaud them for that. But then right after that, I mean right after, they immediately started another video for another game. And that was nice. There's no talking in between. They never said a word about Just Dance, like, at all. It just immediately was like, and here's another game. And this is a game that it seemed like a lot of people were excited for. A lot of people. Just once the audience figured out what it was, they all started going crazy. It was great. People started clapping. They're like, yeah! You hear some guy whistling or whatever in the background. Like, it was pretty fantastic. But it was the Beyond Good and Evil 2 trailer. And I gotta say, the trailer's graphics were beautiful, gorgeous, fantastic. Like, it was a very exciting trailer. The characters' movements were fluid and very realistic. They had like these anthropomorphic creature-like beings, you know, half human, half creature. I've never played Beyond Good and Evil, but I do know there were like animalistic people in it, and one of them was like the cook, and they said his name, and there was they showed the pilot and stuff, and so that's when people really started to figure out what it was, you know, and they're like, oh, it's Beyond Good and Evil, and people started cheering, and That was pretty awesome. And then this giant alien ship just comes in and has like these stabby arms, and it just grabs onto their ship and kind of destroys part of it. And the main character who's flying this other ship, she's like, oh no! And she turns around and flies over, lands on it, sees all the other people are up on deck, and the ship opens up to reveal a bad guy who apparently was in the first game or something, their nemesis or something. So I don't know, it was really cool, very well presented. The audience knew what it was, and they were super excited, so I'd say that they did a very good job on that point. And then from there, they explained that all the characters that were essentially shown in this, all of those main characters that you saw from the previous games, are going to play major roles in it. They're not just going to be some side character that you talk to every once in a while, but they're going to play major roles in the game, so that's pretty exciting. They also said that the game takes place in the 24th century, so that was very interesting. And then right after that, they showed like a very small snippet of this, essentially pre-alpha gameplay footage. I mean, the graphics were nearly as good as the CG trailer. I was very impressed. The fighting looked a little weird because it was stiff, almost, is what I would call it, because when the main character landed on the ship thing and started beating people with this pole arm, it seemed stiff. Like, the character's reactions to being hit by the pole arm didn't seem realistic. They stood upright normally while being beamed so well in the back of the head. Like, you look at games like, I've been playing, what's it called? Bloodborne. I've been playing Bloodborne recently, and whenever you hit an enemy, it just feels so solid and so direct, and you can knock people off their feet and stuff, or their shield arm goes flying back and stuff, and it just feels so realistic when it comes to the combat. But this seemed to be lacking in that a bit. Of course, they did say it was pre-alpha gameplay footage, so I'm sure they're gonna spruce it up a bit because the rest of the game looked phenomenal. So maybe what they're working on right now is more animations and stuff, who knows. But after showing that and showing how great the graphics were, they announced that they'll be doing the Space Monkey program, and they'll be asking the entire fan base of people to essentially help make the game, from bringing forth their ideas, they can create music for the game, or even 3D models. And so that was a really cool addition. Also, holy crap, Joseph Gordon-Levitt showed up on stage. Apparently he created this hit record website that they're using this Space Monkey program for. I didn't even know it existed, but the whole point of the website is to essentially collaborate and bring content together to make stuff. But they've never used it for a video game before until now, so Gordon-Levitt himself shows up to be like, hey, first time ever, we're doing this thing, and it's awesome. And so that was pretty cool to see how passionate he was about his website, and how he seemed super excited to be a part of this project, to have a game be the first game that their website is essentially showcasing. And it seems like a good opportunity for creators to be seen by, game developers or whatever, if they're trying to get into that field. But it was really cool that when they were talking about it, it seemed like a big thing that, creators would definitely want to use for their portfolio. They were showing bits of the website and stuff. It just looked very professional and very well made. And if you could get something on there and actually have it be put in the game and have some kind of proof that, hey, your thing was put into this game, I feel like it would be a great step towards, achieving such a dream as becoming a game developer. So overall, this whole thing, the Beyond Good and Evil game, as well as the opportunities that it presents for creators and the fan base being able to help in creating some aspects of their, one of their favorite franchises, seems just great. overall. I love stuff like this, so we'll see how well it goes. But aside from that, then they popped in with Rainbow Six Siege. You know, it's been out for a while, and this guy, he came out and he bragged about how big their player base is with 35 million players. And it was like, okay, yeah, that's great, whatever, get on with it. What are you presenting today? And apparently there's a new operation called Operation Parabellum, or whatever, and he didn't really talk much about it at all. And then he went on to announce the esport competition for Rainbow Six, that it's bigger, and there's going to be a lot more of it, and they talked about the first one is going to begin in August in Paris. Then they're going to Brazil, followed by Montreal. So they're going all sorts of places. But then they showed like a montage thing that almost felt like a movie for like a sports movie, like Rocky or something, you know. And all these esport players of Rainbow Six were just like, oh yeah, this is what made me as a player of games, or I got injured and that's how I discovered Rainbow Six. And it was like, we're going to the competition and we're never gonna give up and all that. It's just really felt like a forced like movie trailer thing. It was really weird, but it was just to introduce the whole competition of esports for the next like 3 things that they just announced. So that was okay. I mean, it felt like it went on for a little too long. It could have been shortened up a bit, but I guess they wanted to fill some time. But then they got a little more into a game that I know a lot of people have been anticipated and have been expecting for it to come out, and so a lot of people were really excited for this one, and that was, of course, their Trials game. It started out a little weird, though. This guy just shows up on a motorcycle. Apparently he's the developer. I didn't recognize him. Most people didn't recognize him, it seemed. People clapped for like the first second that he drove in on his motorcycle, but then as he started walking up on stage, he kept raising up his hands like, yeah, this is it. This is the game you've been waiting for. And no one cared. Like, everybody stopped clapping. People were like, okay, whatever. Just move on, get this over with. And then he gets up on stage, and that's when he starts being like, Trials! And that's when everyone really started clapping, People were like, oh, okay, Trials, because it did say Trials on the back of his shirt, but it seemed like it was really easy to miss, because he was only facing the back of the audience, like, for a few moments before he kind of started walking up on a stage, and so it was easily missed, and a lot of people didn't seem to see it. But then he said Trials, and people were like, oh yeah, Trials, cool. So that was kind of funny. But yeah, then after that awkward moment, they got pretty much right off with gameplay. Like, it was pretty cool, and they said they're just gonna be their newest and biggest Trials game ever, with all sorts of more like moving sets and stuff, vehicles and things that would be running into stuff and blowing things up as you were playing. I mean, it looked really cool, but it really felt like just more of the same game. Like, it didn't seem like a huge step up from the previous Trials game. Like, similar graphics and similar physics, it didn't seem like they improved on the mechanics of the game as much as they just added more levels with more stuff in them. So, I don't really know how to feel about it. They did say how they've been working on this for absolutely years. They had a huge team of people that have been testing the game and creating like tutorials for the game to make it easier for newcomers to Trials, because a lot of people were complaining about how hard the first games were and how a lot of beginner players just had no idea how to get past certain parts. So they brought in like a large team to create this very in-depth tutorial to kind of direct people in every aspect of the game. And that's good, that's great, because I remember having trouble with some things, and the only way that I figured out how to do it was to look at YouTube videos of people giving tips on how to control your motorcycle, or even watching like Achievement Hunter and seeing the tips and tricks that they did during their challenge events and stuff. So that's where I learned most of my Trials skills, as it were. But so it's good to be able to get that kind of stuff in game now. But along with that, they introduced Brad Hill as some kind of a professor of trials. He was one of the guys who apparently helped with it. But they showed this video thing of him in a lab coat. I think it's like his YouTube channel as a professor or something. But when he came out on stage, he came out in a hoodie. And it was like, what's the point of introducing him as some kind of renowned lab professor of trials if he's not even going to come out as a professor? I feel like they should have had a lab coat back there for him or something so that he could fit his role a little more. But so it just came kind of weird, a little forced. But then after that, they introduced the whole closed beta and that you can go and apply for it at trialsgame.com. So that was pretty cool, and that the game will be coming out February 2019 for PlayStation 4, PC, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch, which was really exciting to me. I love the idea of having a Trials game on my Switch, having a Trials game that I could take anywhere and play at any time instead of having it on like my computers where I've had all my Trials games, and obviously that means I'm tethered to one specific spot. But on the Switch I could be cooking food while playing like a short Trials map or something, So that sounded great to me. But after that, they showed Tom Clancy's The Division 2. I just don't know what to think about this game. I mean, I will say the intro that they gave it was fantastic. The game revolves around basically after the time of the virus. I was hoping it would be more around during the startup of the virus. I don't know if the first game is like that. I know I saw gameplay footage of it and it didn't seem like it was. You were fighting normal people. So I kind of wanted to see like a Division game that was during the apocalypse and like maybe zombie things running around. But I don't think they're going to do that ever. But yeah, it was really well done though. They showed like how after the virus had burned out, there were like citizens and stuff that were just terrified of everything. It showed people hiding in little rooms and like, kids crying and stuff, and the mother being like, it's okay, don't worry, we'll get out of this alive. And then it showed, these bad guy like characters that were grabbing people and arresting them, and then this guy was talking over like a megaphone or something, being like, if you don't obey the laws, then basically you'll be made an example of. And then they like shot a guy in the head, and so they really built up the whole society is like tearing itself apart situation, and that's where you come in to save everyone and fix everything. But I will say, like I was gonna say, I just don't know how to feel about this game, because I saw the first game and like 90% of the reviews were either I recommend it, but, and then the other reviews were I don't recommend it because. And almost every single review said something about how grindy the game is. How like 90% of the game is just pure grind. And I was like, I don't know if I want to buy a grind fest of a game. And so I never bought the first Division game. I was turned off by all of that. So I hope they change that in the Division 2, that they alter up the gameplay a bit more and make it less grindy, I mean, because like there are other games like this out there that are like a more open-y-esque game, that don't feel like a grind fest, So I feel like they can do it, but at the same time they revealed that there were going to be raids, and that was a little worrying to me. I was like, oh great, if there are raids, then odds are it might even be more grindy than the first game, you know what I mean? It's like they're gearing more and more towards it being an MMO. And I've never liked MMOs really. I even tried the Elder Scrolls Online game and just couldn't really get into it. It's just not my cup of tea. So when they announced raids and stuff, I was like, oh man, this is going to be mostly geared towards MMO type gameplay. So I don't know how to feel about this game at all. They showed some gameplay footage, but it looked just like the first game. I even, like, right after I watched their gameplay footage, I brought up the first game's trailers of gameplay, as well as some random people playing it online. And I don't know, it just looked like more of the same, you know? So I just don't know if I'm gonna get into this game or not, you know? They did say, they did have this portion where they were like, the story's gonna be split up into 3 separate chapters that will be released one after the other. And I was like, oh no, pay DLC. Everyone's gonna be mad. But then immediately he said they're all gonna be free for everyone. So it was like, oh wow, okay. Not what I was expecting in the slightest. I feel like they were gonna really try to bank on these chapters, but instead they were like, bam, free, there you go. So that was cool. I fully expected it to be like, you can only get these with the season pass or buying them individually. Just like all those other games, you know, lol. But instead they were like, oh yeah, it's just gonna be free DLC that will come with the game. So that's pretty awesome. It just means they're gonna be releasing it before it's actually done. You know, so you're gonna get to play early, and then you'll get more story as it is, you know, released. So that's pretty cool. Now after that, this one I'm also torn about this game. It's the Donkey Kong being revealed for Rabbids. I mean, that's cool. I did like Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle. That game was a lot of fun. I have it on my Switch. And so the fact that they're adding Donkey Kong was really cool. They even said that he was going to have his own adventure in the game, like his own separate main storyline. So the game's going to be bigger and longer and all that. But it was the way that they presented Donkey Kong that kind of annoyed me, to be honest. Because they were just constantly playing to the nostalgia of Donkey Kong games. They were like, oh, you like Donkey Kong Country? Here's a little snippet of like Rabbid characters that were basically acting like other, you know, Donkey Kong characters and beloved characters and stuff, like Cranky playing the, you know, he was like at the disc player. Oh gosh, I can't remember what they're called, you know, they're so old. But record player. He had a record in front of him, he was like, rear, rear, just like they did with, you know, Donkey Kong Country games and the Donkey Kong Nintendo 64 game. And then they played the Donkey Kong Nintendo 64 theme song at the end of this CG trailer, and it just kind of made me a little saddened, like a little depressed, that I was like, you know, the Donkey Kong 3D open-esque N64 game was one of my favorite Donkey Kong games, and I just feel like I'm never gonna see that game, you know, I'm never gonna see a new fancy for the Switch Donkey Kong adventure that I've been always wanting ever since the N64 game. I just feel like it's not coming, and so the fact that they did that to drive on the nostalgia of the N64 game, it was just like, why do you hurt me? That's the game I really want. And so then all I could think about was that game, and I couldn't think about Rabbids anymore, because I was like, I want that game that doesn't exist so badly. But, I mean, yeah, it looked real good. Donkey Kong as a playable character sounds like a lot of fun, as well as the other Rabbid characters that look like other Donkey Kong characters that you could definitely play as. They revealed them as characters. So, I mean, it looked legit, and they said it was coming out June 26th. So, you know, hey, cool. I just wish it was the Donkey Kong 3D World Adventure game that I've always wanted for the Switch. But who knows, it might come, it might not. We will have to see. Now, following that, they immediately started showing a pretty epic trailer for pirate ships. And it was like, oh yeah, I know what this is. This is the Skull and Bones game that I've been interested in, because it's essentially riffing off of the Assassin's Creed Black Flag gameplay, which is like what everybody liked about that game, let's be honest. That was one of the biggest parts of that game. Everywhere I look at reviews and people are like, you can be a pirate. And I was like, that was the thing. And it was a large majority of the game, and it was a lot of fun. So the fact that they're making a big AAA Skull and Bones game made by the same developers of that game, it's a smart move, a very logical step forward. And I mean, it looked really good. They showed a bunch of pirates, and their philosophy I really liked, that they were like, more and more is what they were saying. They were like, philosophy of the day, more and more. And it was like, oh yeah, that sounds like a pirate theme if I ever heard of one. And then they also showed a bunch of other stuff that looked like some kind of cursed magic, and so there might be curses and cursed treasures that you might be able to get and stuff, because there's this giant ominous cloud that came over the horizon. They were like, oh crap, like bad tidings are coming. So that was really cool. But then after that, they started monologuing about the presentation, of course. But the way that they did it was much better than how EA did their monologuing. They kind of talked a lot more about the aspects of the game, a lot more of the features and stuff, which was a lot, was just really appreciated. A lot of people liked it. They were really interested in what the guy actually had to say, instead of being like, oh great, someone being like, oh, the success of our previous game, and how our last game made this many sales, and how our console has made this many sales, and how backers from these different companies are going to be backing, Like, that's how EA seems to always do their talks and presentations, and it's just like, come on, we don't care about that. But this Ubisoft one, they were like, this is the game, these are the features, these are going to be present, and then they showed like a gameplay footage of those features. And he was like, man, that was very interesting, and it felt way less forced. Like, the guy actually had stuff to say, and he wasn't just making it up on the spot, So that was awesome. But as he talked about the features and stuff, he mentioned there was going to be this mode that was like the hunting grounds, and then they showed video of it, as I was saying. And I mean, one thing that annoyed me about what he said was you'll run into other players, and you'll get to decide whether or not to attack them or to team up with them. And it was like, oh great, I know exactly where this game is going. It's going to be just like every other game like this, where there are going to be other people, and they're going to want to kill each other constantly. They're going to just camp wherever you spawn and just kill you non-stop, stuff like that, It's like, great, grievers are definitely going to be prevalent in this game. But then they did show off the gameplay, and they had like customization of your ship, which looked really cool. They had different cannons that had different stats about like, oh, this one might be worse at further range, but at close range it does a crap ton of damage, and stuff like that. But then they also had customization for your sails as well as the bow of your ship. And then on top of these customization options, you could also customize your ship and purchase items to basically disguise yourself as like a merchant and stuff. So there's going to be some stealth to it, where you can like sneak into places and then get sneak attacks on enemy ships or whatever, because you act like you're some innocent person and not a pirate. So that was surprising to see, but it also was like, oh cool, that'll be a great addition. They didn't have that in Black Flag. But then along with that, like, they definitely showed the gameplay. You won't be able to get off on your ship. Like, I noticed they were attacking an enemy ship and fighting it, and the health was going down, and then once the health got like less than half, maybe 40% or something, then you gotta choose to board the enemy ship. And your guys boarded it, they swung over and attacked them, and it looked like a cutscene thing that showed like a victory symbol over it. So you're not actually gonna be fighting when you jump over. It's just about the gameplay of the ships, and not like boarding and pulling out swords and shooting your enemies, because they just kind of pulled over and jumped over them, and then you won. So I'm guessing maybe you'll lose some crew members. The higher the health when you board them, the higher the risk of losing people or something, maybe. But it doesn't seem like there's going to be any kind of ship battling gameplay like there was in Black Flag, which doesn't surprise me, since this game is specifically geared towards the ships and stuff. But I would have loved to be able to board ships again and fight the pirates just like I did in Black Flag. I just don't think it's going to be, a prevalent portion of the game. But overall, it looks really good. I hope it's not going to become an only online game, because then, like I said, you'll have to deal with grievers and stuff all the time. Kind of like what Sea of Thieves became almost immediately. It's like impossible to play a solo ship. I don't know. Games like that kind of annoy me when it comes to situations where it's like online only, and you can't even play the game at all unless you're online. So if our servers are down or anything, well, that's too bad for you. And once we completely stop, using that game and our game stops making money, we'll just shut down the servers altogether, and then you'll never be able to play Sea of Thieves ever again for the rest of your life. So I really hope this doesn't come down to that as well, because if it does, that'll be upsetting once they, stop supporting the game. Now, moving on from that, they showed a game that I've been really waiting forward and looking forward to, and that was Transference. And they had Elijah Wood come onto the stage. Apparently he's the co-founder of SpectreVision and the creative director of the game. Like, I didn't even know. For those of you who don't recognize the name, Elijah Wood was Frodo Baggins in Lord of the Rings. But, man, I did not know that he was going into gaming. That's so cool. And he was the creative director of it, too, so that's a lot of fun. But, man, the game itself looked so cool. Like, I wasn't expecting much out of Transference when I saw that there were, like, live people, cutscenes and stuff. I've never been able to get into those games. I played a lot of old ones that had live people in them, and, like, point-and-click adventures with live people, and they were just so bad. It was so forced. The voice acting and stuff was horrendous, and I was like, oh no, they're doing that with the AAA game. This is gonna be so weird. But then I saw the gameplay footage, and most of it was like in a 3D game environment, and it looked like almost a walking puzzle simulation game. But they even said you'd be solving puzzles and, figuring out and piecing together the mystery within the game, where you'll be jumping into consciousnesses of, like, I don't know the plural of that, but into the minds of multiple people, essentially, and figuring out what happened, like you're interrogating people. It was very peculiar, because it also seemed like a horror game. There was a kid that you were entering the conscience of, and he was like freaking out. He had a voice in his head being like, don't listen to them, they're all liars. So, I don't know, it was very intriguing. And then they showed a lot of, like, walking around a house, picking up items, and then having this ghost monster glitch thing come at you, which is the part that made me feel like it was a horror game. But then they showed it was a release date for the fall. This fall. So I'm very excited for that. I really want to see what this game is all about, because I was like, oh, it's going to be some kind of a bunch of people did something bad, or, a train exploded and they're trying to figure out who planted the bomb or something, But instead, it was, I don't know, the kid was freaking out about people being liars and stuff, and I don't know. And this horror aspect added to it and stuff. I'm very interested in it. It certainly piqued my intrigue. And then moving on from there, this is where it got really cool. They brought out Starlink, and I'm kind of excited for this game. It's space exploration, ship flying, shoot 'em up game. It seems to have RPG elements added to it as well. There was this major overall storyline, but their main goal definitely seemed to be selling the toy controller things that come with it, almost like, I can't remember that game. It was like that Toys to Life thing, where, like, you had Spyro and stuff, and you put them on the platform to get them into your game, or like Nintendo Amiibos and things, but it was this controller that was this toy ship, and you could transform it like a transformer, and it would change your ship in the game. I don't know. I'm certainly not going to buy those things. Hopefully the game will be playable without them. I'm pretty sure it will be. It sounded like it was, but aside from that, the gameplay looked really cool. They mentioned it was going to be for the Nintendo Switch, and so I was like, oh yeah, cool. And they mentioned something about what sounded like some kind of alliance system where you're going to try to find people to join your cause. I don't know how in-depth that's going to be, or if it's even going to be like a system at all. Maybe it'll just be part of the storyline of like, we gotta go get these people, and so you go over and you save them from something and they're like, we'll join you. You know, or if it's going to be an overall system, kind of like Shadow of Mordor, you know, where you were, you know, taking over orcs and stuff and setting them up as your chiefs and captains, you know. I don't know how in-depth it's going to be. I hope it's going to be fairly in-depth, but it didn't seem like it would be. But then right after that, they introduced Star Fox. Like, they showed a spaceship that wasn't Star Fox's ship to kind of mislead you, you know? And then you see hands pushing buttons, and you're like, the hand kind of looks a little familiar. And then suddenly it shows an eye, and it's like, the eyeball's a little furry. And then it zooms out, and it's like, oh, it's Star Fox. Awesome. And then, after showing the big reveal of Star Fox and the ship flying around for a little bit, the co-founder comes out on stage and he starts talking about Star Fox for a little bit. He's like, oh yeah, we're excited to introduce Star Fox and his entire crew to the game. So it's not just Star Fox as a playable character, but the entire crew is coming along with the game almost as if it were a full-fledged Star Fox game. And that is so cool to me. I'm very excited for that. But then immediately after talking about that, he was like, we would like to introduce a guest up onto the stage, someone who is down in the audience right now, Mr. Miyamoto. And he was like, holy crap, what? And so he stands up and smiles, starts clapping, and everyone goes crazy. They're like, oh yeah, Miyamoto, I didn't even notice he was sitting, like, one row in front of me, you know? Like, people were going nuts. People just had no idea he was there, and then he just pops up out of nowhere, and he's like, well, hello, everybody. And that was pretty great. And they came down and they're like, Mr. Miyamoto, we have a gift for you. And he pulls out like a little ship model of the Star Fox. And then it had like Star Fox as well on the platform. And it said Starlinked on the front. It was a very nice looking model. And it was their first prototype of Star Fox's ship. And he was like, this is the very first prototype, here you go. And Mr. Miyamoto was like, this is really cool. Like, you could see it in his eyes. He had no idea it was coming. And he was like, dude, this is awesome. And then right after that, they were like, oh, and you get to come backstage and meet the entire creative crew on this game. And so they just took him backstage. And he just looked so happy. Like, he was very excited about it. And that was really cool. That part of it made me really happy. I was like, oh man, that's awesome that they got Miyamoto to not only be in the audience, but to give him something and to introduce him to the entire crew. That's a lot of fun, and I don't know, it was very exciting. A lot of people seemed to like it too. Everyone was cheering like crazy. But, overall, the game looks really good. I am excited to get on the Switch. They did say that Star Fox is an exclusive specifically for the Nintendo Switch. And that was upsetting to me. I'm not a big fan of exclusivity. It definitely verifies my purchase of a Nintendo Switch. Now it's like, oh yeah, now I get Star Fox. But at the same time, it's like, for people who don't own a Switch, I don't know, I feel sorry for you, I guess. Like, it sucks that you don't get to have Star Fox in the game. For people who aren't gonna have a Switch, you know? I felt like it was just gonna be a part of the game, but once they announced that, I was like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. And they did reveal, though, that it's gonna be October 16th. It's gonna be the game. So, there's that. I don't know. I was kind of disappointed with it. But, it is what it is. So, there's that. Now, moving on. We had For Honor pop up. That game's already been out for a while. But they introduced that they showed like a 2-second montage, and this guy just came out and talked the whole time. So, they showed a little bit of game footage after of their new game mode, a 4v4 mode called Breach. I don't know, I've never played For Honor, so I can't even say what that's going to be about, or if that'll be any good, because the trailer they showed just looked like a CG trailer for For Honor. Like, it didn't even look like it was for this mode, So, I don't even know what to say about it. I don't know what the mode really is. It's just 4v4, I guess. But then, what was so cool was they give away a free copy of the game. I was like, For Honor's already been out. It's cool that they're showing this new thing, but it should be done, right? But then suddenly he's like, oh, by the way, people who have a PC, if you go to your Ubisoft store, you can get this game for free right now, up to the 18th. He's like, holy crap. So, yeah, I'm actually downloading it right now. I was like, hey, a free game's a free game, am I right? So I've gotten my free copy from the store. I've never played For Honor, so I'm kind of excited. I even messaged all my friends in Discord. I was like, hey guys, you might want to jump into there and get the free game if you didn't know about it, because most of my friends don't watch E3 presentations, and usually I don't. The only reason I'm watching it is because, you know, I'm making videos of it. So I went ahead and told everyone about it, but hey, free game, cool. So that was one of the bigger treats that they actually gave us. Like, that was pretty legit. And then after that, The Crew 2. And I heard The Crew 1, I looked it up, and it seemed to have been received very well. A lot of people liked its racing mechanics and graphics and stuff. And they introduced this whole, like, open beta thing that you'll be able to preload the game, like, right now, they said. So, hey, I mean, that's pretty cool. You'll be ready on day one, right? I love stuff like that. And then they also showed the cinematic trailer that showed all these different vehicles. Like, it started with cars, and then it showed a flying plane going over the cars, and then the plane pulled down, and there was a motorcycle driving next to it, and then the motorcycle went off a jump, and, like, transitioned to race cars that were driving under it or something, and then the race cars were jumped by a boat, like, going off a ramp over the racetrack, back down into water, and then, man, it was crazy. It was all over the place. It was really cool. I've never, you know, like I said in the previous video, I'm not a huge racing game fan. Like I said with Forza, like, I don't know. So I probably won't play it, but it's on all consoles except for the Nintendo Switch, which is a little sad. It's like, oh, the Switch was left out. But hey, I guess that's just what it was, what it is, you know. But, I mean, it looked good, and I'm happy for people who are big racers, because this looks like it's going to be a major racing game, to be sure. Now, after this, they obviously left this for last. I'm not surprised, and that's the Assassin's Creed game. It's the one that's set in Roman times, you know. I mean, the graphics look the same as Origins, honestly. There's not a huge jump between them. But, I mean, it's not surprising. They've been making this game for 3 years. So they were actually making this game during the same development time of Origins itself. So I'm not too surprised that, you know, they have the same graphics, because they were making them at the same time. But the story does look very interesting to me. That's always been one of my more interested wars when it comes to history, the Sparta versus Athens. It's always been very exciting to me in history classes and stuff, so I'm like, oh, I wonder how they're going to do this, you know, in game form. And I don't know, it looked really good though, because they showed, I don't know, this new aspect of the game, I guess. It was essentially like you like talk to NPCs, you actually have options when talking to them. And I mean, hopefully it's more in depth than most games. A lot of games you get to talk to them, but you really don't change anything. Nothing different happens depending on what you say, you know, and I'm fully expecting that with this game. But at the same time, I mean, they spent 3 years making this game. That's a long time. They really seem to put their effort into it, especially for an Assassin's Creed game, which, you know, for a while were like pumping out every single year. So the fact that they put 3 years behind this game is very exciting to me. It sounds like it has a lot of polish and whatnot. The conversations with NPCs did look cool though, because there were moments where you had like 4 different options. There was one moment that you only had 2 options, but one of them was like you lie to him or you tell him the truth. So I'm not surprised there were only 2 options there. I don't know, it looked really good. They showed an entire gameplay segment that went on for a long time. I was very surprised at how much gameplay they showed of this game. And, I mean, it looked great, it handled great. The characters and NPCs that were talking, their facial motions and stuff were really well done. It didn't seem too overly dramatic a facial expression, but it also didn't seem like it was too little and too stiff. So I am very impressed with it so far. They did bring back the leveling system from Assassin's Creed Origins. She ends up fighting oh, that's a big thing I should mention. They showed that you can choose a character, either a male or a female. So there are two characters, a guy and a woman. They have different names and different voice actors. They're both fully voiced, which is pretty rad. And you play them for the entire game. It's not like Origins where you have small snippets of the girl and the rest of it was the guy. But in this one, the entire game you're either going to be a male or a female. I don't think it changes like anything really in the game, just you get to play as a woman, and that's really cool. I love choices like that, especially if you get to create your character, like in Skyrim and stuff, but you don't really get to create your character, it's just a choice between two characters, but hey, you know, they're changing things, and for the better, in my opinion. I just like having choices, like from dialogue choices to choosing your character. It's a lot of fun. So that was a really cool addition. And yeah, like I was saying, they brought back the leveling system. They were playing as the female character, which demonstrated that she is fully voiced, which would indicate that the male is also fully voiced as well. And she ends up fighting this level 19 enemy that like chases after her, jumps off a horse, and they fight. And it looked very similar to Origins gameplay-wise, you know, battle system-wise, as well as leveling system-wise. And then the character leveled up, so we got to see the inventory screen. They also got an item from the enemy, so they equipped a helmet, and it changed what the character looked like. She was suddenly wearing a helmet. And then they showed the level up screen, and it looked aesthetically different from Origins, but it more or less was exactly the same. It also seemed, when I looked at the inventory screen, it looked very similar as well, so I'm fully expecting a similar crafting system to Origins, where you'll be upgrading, you know, quiver and armor and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it looked good. What they showed, the gameplay, I was like, oh no, they're showing a lot of gameplay. And so I got worried for being spoiled of a lot of stuff, but it looked like what they were showing was mostly either side quest oriented or one of the smaller portions of the main campaign, in which case it didn't spoil like anything at all. So that was much appreciated as well, because we have had trailers and gameplay footage in the past that have spoiled major portions of games. That was like, why would you do that, you know? But luckily they didn't do that here, and so I was very happy with that outcome. So overall, I mean, it was a great presentation. That was the last game that they showed, and then they went on to have like Divinity 2 gameplay or something. But I mean, man, they had a decent amount of games. They had a lot of gameplay footage, way more than I was expecting. I was very impressed with that. Their trailers were phenomenal and well thought out. Even the stuff that they talked, whenever they talked on stage, it was, like I said, it was well thought out. They actually talked about features of the game. There wasn't very much side stuff, and whenever there was side stuff, like the whole Miyamoto thing, it didn't last very long, maybe like a minute or two tops. And then they immediately got back into more game stuff. So, and none of it felt forced or awkward other than the motorcycle thing and the start with the band. So overall, hey, I mean, that was great. They kept the talking to a minimum and brought forth a lot of gameplay stuff and, you know, game features. So all in all, I think I'm going to give this Ubisoft presentation an 8 out of 10. So thank you all so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.